Just a reminder of what is the Rhino Operating System. It has 5 components. These are those 5 components. We're not going to review them in detail today, but just a reminder that these are the 5 components of ROS. And today we are going to talk about the how component. And kind of the Birgo big idea for today is that in order to best move forward, we need to take an honest look backward. So today we're going to take an honest look backward. And before we do that, I want to jump into just a little activity with you all. If you're like our family on Thanksgiving, you might have spent some time talking about what you're grateful for. And we do that with our kids. We actually sort of did it yesterday as a follow-up to Thanksgiving with them. But what I'd like you all to do is just in the chat, post something that you're grateful for. It could be personal, professional, anything. I'd like you to just post something that you're grateful for in the chat. Anything from the past year. So, kind of reflecting on the past year, what are you grateful for? Health, new dog, good stuff, family, health, family, dogs, lots of dogs. Man, the dogs are maybe more than the family here in the chat. Buying a first home, new nephew, those are all great things to be grateful for. All right, so now here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you can keep doing that if you're still filling out things you're grateful for. I'd like you to now put a person that you're grateful for at Birgo. This could be somebody that's on the call right now, or it could be somebody that's not on the call right now. But go ahead and put a person that you're grateful for at Birgo. Shannon, that's very sweet of you. Awesome. So we got shout outs for Michelle, Evan, Lindsay, Sean, Kim. I am personally very grateful for Kim as well. She's holding it together. I'm grateful for Gabby for leading this meeting, taking charge. I'm grateful for my wife as well, doing amazing work on the people team. People are grateful for Mel and Divine and Melissa and Will, Mackenzie. Those are all great people to be grateful for. So here's the thing. Expressing gratitude is proven to boost our own morale and to boost our own motivation. I don't know if you all just experienced that, but not only does it feel great to be appreciated, but it feels great to appreciate other people, to express gratitude towards them, to express gratitude for things that have happened over the past year. It can be incredibly powerful. And so what we're going to talk about today is what I call the annual review, and specifically why I believe every Birgonite should be doing an annual review. Here are 3 opportunities that the annual review will provide you with if you do the annual review. And I'll talk a little bit about what I do towards the end. Shannon and I actually are getting ready to do our annual review and our annual planning in a few weeks, and I'll talk about what that looks like for us. So first of all, the annual review gives you the opportunity to reflect. So just like we just did, you express gratitude, you reflect back on and said, hey, what am I grateful for? It helps us just to remember and reflect on those things that have impacted us over the past year. Allows us to celebrate achievements. So I may be alone in this, but I struggle to celebrate achievements. As soon as I've achieved something, I'm already on to the next thing. I seldom look back and say, wow, look at that milestone, or look at what we've accomplished. And so I kind of have to force myself to look back and say, wow, we've actually done something great here. Let me celebrate that achievement. Let me celebrate that with my wife, celebrate that with our team. And also an opportunity to reflect and look back on those challenges that we faced. You've probably heard me say this before, but I believe we don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. So it's not just those experiences that teach us. It's when we actually look back and reflect on those experiences and we say, okay, what did I learn here? That we actually can gather as much learning from that as possible. And you've heard me say this as well. Nelson Mandela said, I never lose, I only win or I learn. So it's just this concept that we don't have to be thinking of those challenges or those failures as losses. we can be thinking of them as learnings. So that's the opportunity to reflect. The annual review also gives us an opportunity to reassess. So things change throughout the year. The reality is that the only thing that's going to change is our realities are going to change. Our priorities are going to change. And throughout the year, that always happens. We often find ourselves at the end of the year just in a little bit of a different place, better or worse than we started the year. Circumstances might have changed. Maybe, at the beginning of the year, we were trying to buy a new house and now we've moved. Or maybe, we've conceived a child, or, anything might have happened that might have just changed those circumstances a little bit, maybe as a new position in the company. So the circumstances can really change our outlook and then therefore can change our priorities. So before we go to set our goals for next year, we need to reassess and relook at those priorities and say, hey, what's changed throughout the year? And the third is the opportunity to rejuvenate. So this gives us an opportunity to take a deep breath, to inhale and breathe in those achievements, to exhale out those failures, and actually just take some time to reflect on, hey, what's gone well? And that can actually bring us into a state of rest. It can actually renew our motivation for what we're trying to accomplish. So before we go on to the next thing, we have to sit back and actually breathe and rejuvenate and rest and experience that little bit of joy that comes from reflecting. Hopefully you all just experienced that, comes from reflecting and expressing gratitude. So again, just the three things that the annual review gives us an opportunity to do. It's the opportunity to reflect. So looking back and reflecting on kind of what's gone well, expressing gratitude. The opportunity to reassess those priorities, see what's changed, maybe what stayed the same. And then the opportunity to rejuvenate, to actually experience rest before we jump into a new year. So I want to do a Zoom poll and be honest, because this is anonymous. So I won't know your answers. I'll only know the aggregate. On a scale from 1 to 10, how do you think the past year went for you? So on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you think the past year went for you? 10 is best year ever. Couldn't have gone any better. 1 is worst year ever. Couldn't have gone any worse. And then everything in between is, in between. How do you think this past year went for you? All right, we've got most of you in. Last chance to go ahead and respond. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share those results with you all. So again, this is anonymous, but you all get to see the aggregate results. So, probably not too surprising. It looks a little bit like a bell curve. Interestingly, sort of the peak of that bell curve is an 8. So it looks like the 8 is both the most common response and sort of like if this was a normal distribution, maybe 7.5 would be the mean, and everything else kind of goes out from there. Got a couple people said, hey, best year ever, and obviously you got some kind of down there at the bottom, worst year ever, and that's okay. Things happen that are outside of our control that may cause our year to go really well or not so well. So hopefully going through that gratitude exercise earlier helped you to remember. Maybe if we hadn't done that before we did this, maybe you would have been a 7. But since we did the gratitude exercise, you're like, I'm actually an 8. Some things have gone well. Some things that I'm grateful for this year. So the goal is really just to give this kind of honest, candid reflection on, hey, how did this year go, before jumping into the new year. And that's really what the annual review is all about. It's about doing this honest, candid reflection of what worked well, what didn't work well. And so we do have a tool for this. The tool that I like to use is called the annual review. So I'll share this tool and then I'll talk a little bit about my process and our process that I go through with Shannon. So first of all, this is a sort of very truncated version of the process that I go through with Shannon. Her and I go through a much more detailed process, which I'll talk about here at the end. But this is just a one-page tool that gets you thinking about the past year. So at the beginning of the tool, you'll see the first thing that you're doing is kind of celebrating some personal and some professional wins. So you're just asking yourself, hey, what's gone well this past year? You know, for us, it was an anniversary trip to Greece, or at least for me. Disney cruise, had some really good daddy-daughter dates, including my first ever daddy-daughter dance with my oldest daughter. We started doing weekly family meetings I thought have gone pretty well, and my health markers have actually been improving. Something I don't take for granted. You know, many of you know I had cancer 10 years ago, so I stay on top of that stuff, and that's a real win for me. Some professional wins, you know, I moved fully into the visionary seat, so we've got Ed as the intergalactic integrator, crushing it. It's been a real win for me. Kim's doing a great job in her role, and I've been able to really kind of fill the visionary seat more fully, doing these ROS content sessions. We held our first ever hybrid investor event that went well. I was sort of quarterbacking that. Took a sabbatical week, a bit of a vision week for me in August, and I joined a coaching program called Strategic Coach. It's been helping with kind of coaching me professionally as well. Then I boil that down into 3 words. The 3 words I picked are resilience, visionary, and family. And I just reflect on a few things I'm grateful for from the past year. So the exercise we just went through, you know, time with family, celebrating 10 years with Shannon, the team that we have here at Birgo, you know, really getting to live into my RPRS, you know, my desire zone in the visionary seat, reaching 300 million in AUM, huge milestones. And then I go through and do a goal review. So each goal I'll go through and say, hey, what was my original goal? What is the outcome? And do I have any feedback? So this is actually the session that we did last week. I talked about my goal was to reduce my body fat by 2% while maintaining my BMI and body weight. I did reduce my body fat, but dropped my weight. And so I'm going to increase my protein intake and change my sleep schedule as a follow-up. I had a goal to do this 1 week vision week. I completed that. And my feedback here is just to continue doing this annually. Been really great for me, particularly in my new role, to take that time to really do some vision seeking and vision casting. Joined Strategic Coach. That was my goal. Completed that. And I, as feedback for that, I actually bumped up to a sort of a higher level of this Strategic Coach for next year. That'll put me in Chicago 2 days a quarter. Really excited about that. And last, we set a goal to start doing weekly family meetings with our kiddos. We want to do at least 50% of the weeks of the year. We've actually done really well at that. It's probably been much more than like 80% of the weeks. Feedback, it's working well for Ava, our oldest. She's enjoying these family meetings. Our middle child, Eliza, we got to maybe increase our engagement a little bit. And our youngest child, she has no idea what's happening. So, taking that candid reflection on kind of, how are things working? What's working well? What's not working well? So that's the annual review, at least the tool that I kind of go through. Just real quick, the process that I go through with Shannon, we actually do a dinner sort of the night before. So we do a dinner together to celebrate and do the annual review. And for us, it's kind of a multi-hour dinner. We review photos from the past year, look at books we've read from the past year. We review journal entries from the past year, and we just celebrate all of those wins. And then we actually, the next day, go into our annual planning session. So the next day, we take all of that, hey, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and that sort of feeds into our next day planning session, which again is kind of a multi-hour planning session. To really set our goals for us as individuals and for us as a family for that next year. So that's my process. This tool is meant to just give you a little bit of a sort of a starter point for doing that on your own. Kim just posted that in the chat. So I just highly recommend, some point over the next, say, month, that you would take a look at that tool and just maybe take a clarity break, maybe take an hour off and start to work on that tool. So real quick, just the recap, what is the purpose, the why behind doing an annual review? It gives us the opportunity to reflect, the opportunity to reassess, and the opportunity to rejuvenate. A couple action items that I would recommend for you from here. First of all, plan a celebration. We're getting into a great time of year just to celebrate. December is a perfect month to do this. Plan some time either as an individual or maybe as a family or maybe as a team. Maybe it doesn't have to be a multi-hour dinner the way that Shannon and I do it, but maybe just take some time to celebrate and reflect on what you've accomplished this year, because we've all accomplished something that is worth celebrating. The second is to express gratitude. You can do this in your own individual way. Maybe it's a nectar recognition to somebody on the team. Maybe it's a note of gratitude that you want to write to a mentor or somebody that's had an impact on your life over the next year. Maybe you want to bake some cookies for somebody in your family or a mentor or a friend that has had an impact on your life over the past year. But just take a moment to express gratitude. And the third is review your goals. So go through those goals, figure out, hey, what have I completed? What's been my progress? And what feedback do I have before I go into next year? And if you don't have goals for this year, that's actually what we'll be talking about in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we'll go through our annual planning. I'll talk a little bit about the planning that Shannon and I do in our sort of family annual planning sessions. And if you don't have goals for this year, that'll set you up perfectly well to have goals for next year. Now, some of you might be thinking, that doesn't sound very romantic, Andrew. You've got like a whole agenda that you're doing with Shannon for your annual celebration and your annual planning. That is true. That may not sound like the most romantic thing, but I'll tell you what, it's effective. It's something that we've been using as a family to just continue to push us forward, continue to get aligned around, hey, are we aligned on how we're parenting our kids? Are we aligned on our hobbies? Are we aligned on what we want next year to look like? And it just takes time. So for us, it takes a few hours of celebration the night before and then a few hours of planning the next day. And so in 2 weeks, I'll talk about what we do for planning. That's it for today. Before we wrap, anybody have any questions?